This content is brought to you by Fisher Improvement Technologies Online, a learning platform that includes self-paced courses, knowledge sharing, and networking opportunities for safety, quality, and performance improvement professionals. Join now for free at online.improvewithfit.com.
This show is brought to you by Safety FM.
Over 25 years helping leaders reducing errors and incidents. Here is your host of the Essential Leadership Cycle podcast, Rob Fisher.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another round of the Essential Leadership Cycle podcast. I'm your host and intentional leader, Rob Fisher. We've got a real treat today. Some extremely good friends. We've known each other for decades. Stu and Misty Dunivan. Misty's the president of Integra Wellness, and some of you know Stu because he's both been on the podcast before and he's one of our consultants. And I wanted to have him on today because I want him to tell you a little bit about what they do at Integra Wellness related to stroke prevention, and then we're going to tie that back into why that's important related to the Essential Leadership Cycle. So welcome, Stu and Misty Dunivan. Misty, if you just want to introduce yourself and your company, that'd be great.
Hi, thanks for having us, Rob. My name's Misty. I am president of Integra Wellness. We do corporate wellness testing, community wellness testing. We have mobile units that we take our equipment in, we set it up, and we do wellness testing, trying to prevent stroke and other vascular diseases.
And by the way, I had Misty test me along with some other people just because it was well, they were available, but they were off work, and I was just interested in what they do. Stu, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do with the company?
Actually, my role in Integra Wellness is I'm the education director, so kind of works along the lines of what we do for FIT as well. Just go out and educate people a lot, awareness in human performance, awareness in what our risks are for health, and some ways that we can minimize that risk.
So can you guys just share with us what some of those are? Because I felt like having y'all on from the Integra Wellness perspective would really help people from a self and team awareness perspective related to specifically the stroke prevention and other wellness things that you guys do. Can you just explain to people a little, Misty, a little bit about that process and what it does and why you guys do what you do?
Well, we kind of started our company in '99, and basically it came about because we saw a need in the healthcare field for people to be proactive in taking care of themselves. So that was the kind of the goal. Rather than having a sick care plan, we wanted a well care plan. How does a person, an individual, go from being completely and totally reliant on their physician to identify and treat disease to how can I, as an individual, take control of my health care and take some preventive steps to move myself forward in terms of health. So in '99, we made the decision to start this company. And part of the problem was that so many times when people are working, they don't have time to go to the doctor. They don't have time to go to a facility, have testing done to prevent disease. So what we wanted to do was take it to them. How easy can we make it for people? Because obviously we all know if you make it easy, people will be more likely to participate. So we take our equipment in, we set it up in the facility that, the corporation has available for us. It basically looks like a little clinic. When people walk in, there are privacy screens around everything, so you're not laying out on a bed for all to see. They walk in the door, they see a little mini clinic, they check in. We now offer digital reports, and of course, we've always had a radiologist that interprets everything that we do. He's on staff with us. And so they walk in, they fill out a little bit of paperwork. They go to 3 different stations or 4 different stations now that we offer bone density. And each one is private. They lay down on a bed. We perform testing on them. They go to the next station and on. And then after their testing is done, we send all of the images and data to our radiologist digitally. He interprets, and then they get the report back either by snail mail, if they want a regular paper copy, or they can choose to have an electronic data report sent to them, which they can then forward to their physician. And what it does is it empowers not only the patient, but it empowers the physician as well. Because many times with the things that we identify, if you don't have symptoms, your doctor can't treat it. For insurance purposes, obviously, because everything revolves around insurance. And so what we found is these vascular diseases that we test for typically don't exhibit symptoms. So if we find the asymptomatic patient, give that data to their own physician then has the evidence that he needs to require insurance companies to pay for testing, and then the treatment goes on from there. So we're not involved in any of the treatment per se, but we are involved in the pathway to treatment.
So, I mean, that's part of that self-awareness piece. Am I aware of what's going on in my own body? What are your e-colors, Misty?
Well, I am a red, obviously, over, I think it's green, yeah. I'm a red over green.
So the reason why I asked that is because that was a great explanation of the what and the process. And Stu, what are your e-colors?
Yellow over red.
Yellow over red. So you can give us a little bit of the why and the who. I'll mix you guys up a little bit. But I think it's important to talk about the tests that you do, what you're testing for, and why you do those. And I'd like to hear the why from your personal perspective, including the patient's perspective. I think Misty, what you said was fantastic, because you told us that it empowers that individual that may not know they've got a problem to go to their physician and say, look, I might have a problem. And here's the proof that problem might exist for something the physician wouldn't normally test for. Tell me a little bit about the why and what you're looking for from you guys' perspective.
You know, right, Rob, we spend a lot of time talking about errors being preventable and predictable, but only if you recognize them. Well, with us, we know that most strokes are caused by plaque buildup inside of the carotid arteries right here. If we wait for an individual to have symptoms of stroke, half the time they're actually having a stroke. So if we can do a simple ultrasound test that looks at how much plaque they have in their arteries, and we'll also do a Doppler on to see how fast the blood's flowing through there, we can predict people who are at risk for having a stroke. And now that can be treated without them ever having to have a mini stroke or some type of an event. Therefore, it's predictable. I know that, we've shared stories in the past about some of the health issues that your mother and my mother both went through. And my mother was in a nursing home for about 13 years of my life. The leading cause of nursing home admissions is from stroke. So if we can, go out there and identify people, which we have over the last 20 years, we've identified hundreds of people who take these reports into their doctor. They haven't had a mini stroke. They haven't had an incident, but they show 80-90% plaque buildup in their arteries. Now that doctor's got that evidence to take care of that patient and prevent them from ever having a stroke by going in and cleaning the plaque out of the arteries. So it's predictable, it's preventable, and we can make people aware of it so they can treat it and take care of themselves. And that, that's empowering the individual, empowering the doctor, and impacting the family.
Yeah, I mean, so what are some of those symptoms that people should watch for? What we really want is people to voluntarily, and companies to voluntarily use a service like yours, because if they really believe in safety first, it's not just safety because they don't want their hand to get injured. It's about the wellness. I mean, all these companies have wellness programs, but this sounds like something that could be extremely predictive. That would be true wellness.
It's actually, when you look at the ROI or the return on investment for a company, especially a self-insured company, it makes total sense. Would you rather have one of your employees go to the ER because they're having a stroke, and then all of the subsequent testing that has to be done and all of that. And then hopefully they're a candidate for surgery. They may not be a candidate for surgery because it may be too late. So you've got all of these costs of ER and all of this, or would you rather identify one of your employees that has the start of plaque buildup or the start of an aneurysm, and then see their personal physician, and that way we're preventing it. So the biggest thing for me in terms of just personally why it matters to me is this. I'll just share a personal story with you. My mother and father have both been tested by us many times. My mom, I knew that she had some plaque buildup in her arteries. We were watching it. Her doctor was watching it. So we're trying to keep her from getting to that ER visit type situation. Well, in the course of one of her wellness tests, I identified the start of an aortic aneurysm. So an aortic aneurysm is when the large artery coming off of your heart all the way down through your stomach, it bifurcates or splits at the belly button. That large artery is the biggest one in the body. It carries the most blood through, obviously. If that enlarges or becomes an aneurysm, it can rupture. Most of the time, if it ruptures, you don't make it. So
that's the widowmaker, right?
I'm sorry?
That's the widowmaker, right?
It's sort of like a widowmaker. Because it carries so much blood, if it ruptures, there's nothing they can do typically. So for my mom, and then of course my family, because it's hereditary most of the time, identifying this aneurysm literally saved her life, because most of the time with an aneurysm, an aortic aneurysm, there aren't symptoms. People, their aneurysm ruptures and they die typically. So if you can find these things, that's the second test that we offer. We do the stroke screening, which is identifying plaque in the arteries. We do an abdominal aortic aneurysm screening, which is the one I'm talking about now. We do a test for blockages in the legs, not only for preventing amputation of limbs, but also because if you have plaque buildup in the legs, you're typically going to have it in the heart as well. So usually if we send a patient to their doctor because they failed the leg test, the very first thing the doctor's going to do is heart testing also, because they know they go hand in hand. And then of course we do a bone density test as well to prevent future fracture. But in the way of the aneurysm for my mother, what we did was we identified it, sent that paperwork to her doctor. Her doctor now for years has been watching that aneurysm. She's now a candidate for surgery, so they'll go in and repair that aneurysm and save her life, rather than having this catastrophic event happen where my mother had to die because no one knew it was there.
Yeah.
And so for us, it's not only about saving lives, but for me, if I have an employee come in and they know they're not eating well, they know they're not exercising enough, they know there are some things that they probably should change. Well, what we've seen happen is if they come in and let's say they just have 30% blockage in their carotid arteries. Well, when they get that report back, they're actually looking at images of plaque in the arteries and they're going, wow, okay, now I see. Now I understand what's actually happening inside my body. Maybe I do need to make some changes. And for us, that's the win.
Yeah.
The win is catching those somewhat younger employees before all of this other stuff has to happen. And that's the beauty of what we do. And so when it happens, it's just amazing.
And that number's not even in the hundreds and hundreds of people that you've identified that had to go to their doctor because they needed to save their lives. That's impacting the lives and families and extended families, and therefore the organizations that you test for in a positive way, because it's giving people a little bit better why that is very personal to them, instead of just seeing on the news that you should eat betterly, you should not smoke, all the things you shouldn't do that we know. I think that certain personalities actually need a little more information to actually act off of those, and you guys are providing that information. I've always thought what you did is fascinating. I mean, you tested a very good friend of both of ours, and that said they subsequently went to their doctor to get on a certain treatment plan because they got a little bit scared about what the findings were. And without that, we would have never known.
We see a lot of corporations that we work with, Rob. They they're pretty good about annually doing blood work screenings, checking for cholesterol levels and things like that. And, you know, we know a lot of people that, okay, my cholesterol is high, I take a pill for it. You know, my blood pressure's high, I take a pill for it. There's something about when they actually see that image of plaque starting to build up in those arteries. Man, I need to make some lifestyle changes. And that's why it's the real win for, you know, if you look at our website, everything on there's the stories of people having surgery and it was life and death. And those are great. We love those, obviously. But the real win, like Misty said, is when you have a person that's in the early stages, we identify that plaque starting to build up in their arteries and they make those lifestyle changes because all of a sudden they see it, they believe it, and they understand they're going to have to do some things differently, or they know what path that's going to go down in the future. So it's really giving them what they need to make the right decision. You know, we always talk about the why, you know, drives human behavior. That when you see that, all of a sudden, man, it's time to do some things differently than what you've been doing in the past.
Yeah, and you guys talked a little bit about the financial ROI, but the human capital ROI is just as important. You know, I remember, and Stu, you may have already left when this happened, but my boss at our, you know, at South Texas Project actually died, and he was very young. He was 42 when he passed. And I just remember not just his family and how they were impacted by having a gentleman with 2 young daughters pass at that young age, but the ripple effect through the organization of the human impact is, you know, set the finances aside. If organizations really have this desire to be to have human impact, then I think that they would look at this as a real win. On the one hand, if they spent the money and they found nothing, that's a huge win. But on the other hand, if they spend the money and they find something, that's a huger win.
Well, and also it's about compliance as well. We've had patients come in that, you know, they mentioned to me, I'll ask them after looking, you know, inside their arteries, or looking at because they answer some medical questions for us, and I'll ask them, are you on a statin drug, which is cholesterol medicine, you know? No, I don't want to take it. I've heard about those statin drugs. I don't want to take it. Well, when you can show someone plaque that's building up in an artery and ask them, would you rather take a statin drug that may have a few side effects, but I can also teach you some things so that those side effects don't affect you. Would you rather be compliant and do that, or would you rather have a stroke? And so for me, a lot of the time, it's about helping someone see that if you're compliant in your own healthcare, the future that you're looking at is so much different. And so we've actually seen medical compliance get better based on what people have learned from their testing results. And even those that come in and there's nothing wrong with them. Let's say they don't need a statin drug. They don't have any history of aneurysm in their family. When you're actually looking at, because they get to watch the screen. They don't get the results that day, but they do get to watch the screen. So they see the blood flowing through the artery. They see their aorta and the size of it. And so it's an opportunity for us to do a little bit of education while we've got them there of why these things are important. Because, you know, I've worked in the medical field for 28 years. So nothing in terms of the medical world scares me or surprises me anymore. But if you're not in that field, it's a scary thing. You know, a lot of people don't have our testing done because they're afraid of what they're going to find out. And what we always tell them is education is power, especially in healthcare. The more you know, the more you can treat yourself, the better path you have then to a healthier future. And so for us, it's a multitude of things. Obviously, we're passionate about what we do, but a lot of companies have seen a better compliance in terms of healthcare from their employees, you know, in terms of what they're willing to do at that point.
Right. So how has the COVID crisis impacted you guys as a business?
It's been a little bit of a challenge just because, you know, a lot of companies they're not doing anything extra right now. And we're kind of an extra thing. we see that changing going forward. Obviously, with the vaccine, that's going to help as well. But one of the things that we do that's a little bit different is we see, one patient at a time. So you're not sitting in a room with a bunch of people. We do it. We go by a schedule. I know everybody's used to going to a doctor's office and sitting and waiting for 30 minutes, and then they send you to another room and you get to wait in there for another 30 minutes. We've got it down to a fine art where we get people in and out in 15 minutes. So a person can come in, go back and be in the testing area. The next person can be filling out paperwork and getting ready for their testing. And so probably 2 or 3 people in the room at a time. So we can manage a lot of that. Of course, we have PPE that we can use as well. That's going to minimize the risk for them and for us as well. So,
yeah. Social distancing is very easy for us in how we perform things because waiting is not an option and never has been. Even before COVID came about, I don't like to wait. I'm impatient.
Really?
Obviously. I'm a red.
I did not see that coming.
So, I'm not a big fan of waiting, and therefore I don't want our patients waiting.
Right.
So we have always said if your appointment time is at noon, you will be seen at noon. And people are always shocked that actually happens.
Yeah.
And employers are happy because we're getting their employees in and out, and we're not holding them up. They're not at a health fair standing around with 15 other people. So it's been a big win once we're able to explain to people how it actually works.
Yeah. Well, I certainly appreciate because you're great friends and we go so far back that you guys have hung in there through this crisis, because I think that, this may be a blip, but just what you do is so needed. And I appreciate you guys coming on. Tell people how they can get a hold of you. Are you on LinkedIn or how can people get a hold of you?
We are on LinkedIn. We're on Facebook. We have a toll-free number, 1-800-884-6251. We have a website, IntegraWellness.com. Many, many ways to get a hold of us.
And after this, you'll send me all that information. I'll make sure when all this gets posted that people will have links to your website. Listen, I really appreciate you guys coming on. I think this is an important thing. From the Essential Leadership Cycle perspective, I think this really speaks to self and team awareness, shared vision and values, and clear roles and processes. And then that helps generate the trust and diversity and inclusion and commitment and accountability and learning. So I think you guys are an integral part of that. Thank you for that pun. And I was giving you the thank you for the pun. And
yeah, I like that.
I think you guys are an integra part of that. And I just really appreciate you coming on and sharing. Is there anything that you guys think I should have asked you about that I didn't?
I think you did a pretty good job.
Yeah, we're going to give you like an 8 out of 10.
8 out of 10. Good. So 20% failure rate. Not bad at all.
Rob, we've always loved partnering with you guys in any way possible, just because I do feel like both of our visions match up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so thank you for having us on. We sure appreciate it.
Well, you bet. And I thank you guys for coming on as well. We'll get you the information on Integra Wellness. And Stu and Misty, thank you so much for taking your time and coming on. I've been your host and intentional leader, Rob Fisher. Remember, intentional leadership starts with you.
The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the host and its guest and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the company. Examples of analysis discussed within this podcast are only examples. They should not be utilized in the real world as the only solution available, as they are based only on very limited and dated open source information. Assumptions made within this analysis are not reflective of the position of the company. No part of this podcast may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means, mechanical, electronic, recording, or otherwise, without prior written permission of the creator of the podcast, Jay Allen.